Hey guys, welcome to Quinian's Budget Crafts. When I first started building the ship, a viewer by the name of Debbie Buckland had mentioned that it would be a good idea to separate the roof so the players could get to the inside of the cabin. And she's absolutely right. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing to point out is that I did move the left side of the captain's cabin over by one width, so about a quarter inch, and took off that decking from the very bottom. We'll put planks in between the boards. So we gotta separate these things. The best way to do that is just very carefully cut through your glue line with an X-Acto. As you go, you can tilt the X-Acto and try to lift it off and see if the glue will just pop free. Sometimes it will. So just follow the glue line all the way around where it's easy to get to. In order to cut the siding where it's over the glue line, make a mark on either end where your glue line is, and then put a ruler between those and use that as a guide to cut right along the siding where the glue line is. Once you have the siding split open, you can then follow your glue line with a knife while lifting the top deck off so it kind of separates a little bit on its own. The trick is to just go nice and slow, don't make any unnecessary cuts till you get it all the way off. And if a little sliver of your siding tried to pop off, just glue it back on, it'll be fine. Go ahead and do that to each of the decks that you want to separate. And don't forget to peel off any excess glue that was left over. For the back deck area sticking out where the captain's cabin is, just hold up a little piece of your siding boards, make a little mark on it, cut it off, and glue it in between each of those little things sticking out. You'll need 2 of these boards per thing, and just trim off the excess board. Don't forget to put your texture back on there. As for the top deck, the second floor, balcony, whatever you want to call it, the curve you can see is not actually curved neatly, and it looks strange anyway, so let's just cut that off flush. There we go. So onto this front portion here. As you can see, I didn't really shape it yet, so just go ahead and draw you a line on there some way that you like the look of it and cut that off. Of course, try and keep it even on both sides. So in order to fill in this angle here on the bow of the ship, we'll just use more of those hole planking boards, but go ahead and bevel off one corner. You can do that by trying to cut it off with an X-Acto. It won't come out very even, but it does work. Or you can use a little piece of sandpaper and just sort of grind it down. Once you've gotten it beveled, go ahead and glue the very front piece on first and lean it back so that your 2 sides sticking out are kind of up at an angle. Put down some more hot glue, put the side down. You're just going to have to mash it in place and hold it until that glue dries. Lean it back as you go. That's the purpose of the bevel, so you can lean it back. And when you get to the ends of the side pieces, go ahead and glue them to the wall too. If you want, as you go higher, you can actually squeeze the wall in to get more of a drastic shape on the front of this. So go ahead and go up about 4 boards high and stick in a little triangular piece. I have no idea what this thing is called, but all ships seem to have them. It's like a little mini deck up there. And then glue in 1 more board just to cap off the little hole and any other weird imperfections. We will still have a small void right at the very tip, but we're going to hide that with the board that goes across the top and all the fancy stuff. Go ahead and take some sandpaper and smooth out your bow lines as well as that wall you just made. And when we do the fancy part, we'll have dual stairs on either side of this deck and then a little ladder going up the front to the little mini deck. So now we need to remake that top deck thing that goes up there, because the one we took off got kind of destroyed. So here's what we do. Take one of those pieces of hole planking, glue it in just a couple spots so you'll be able to remove it. Cover the whole thing in hot glue on the outside, because even though hot glue is flexible, it will be stiff enough. Then put a cross piece on that to keep it from bowing either direction. Wait for all that glue to dry and then pop it out of the front. Now you can use that to get the proper curvature for your top deck. And you can use the back of the old one to trace on your sort of mushroom shaped thing. When you cut this whole piece out, go ahead and bevel the edge of the curve, or just cut it at an angle, that'll work too. That way it'll fit in there a little bit better. Once you've got it all cut out and everything fits right, go ahead and glue in a piece of board along the front for the top deck to have a lip to sit on. And now we need a new lid for the back one too. Pretty simple, just flip it upside down, drop it on a piece of foam and trace it out. The front of this is still squared off, it doesn't follow the curve of the top deck thing there. which is actually kind of cool. You could leave that as an overhang if you want. But either way, I don't want to cut that just yet because stuff will move around too much on me. So let's go ahead and do the magnets. So I used way too many magnets on this first one. It holds way too well. 5 is more than enough. I went overboard. So in that front curve there, I didn't really have anywhere to put a magnet that was strong, so I added some little posts on there. So just go ahead and do the magnets like the last video. Poke your hole with the glue gun, stick them in there. A good way to get the magnet position exactly perfect on the corresponding piece is to just flip it over, stack them on top of each other, perfectly lined up as best you can, and then just give it a little push to make an indent. Go ahead and color the backs of your magnets so you know which end goes into the foam. If you get these backwards, they will repel each other. And repeat the process. Stab a hole, put a little glue in, drop the magnet in. These magnets are so strong you can actually recess them a little bit if you want to. So on the joint between the deck and the ship itself, I only used 5 magnets. I maybe could have used one of those very front corners that kind of sticks up a little bit, but not enough to be noticeable. It's up to you however many you think you need. Start low and add more if you need them. So there we go, everything's magnetized. So for that space between the inner and outer hole, like I was saying before, you could leave it open if you want, or you can cover it over. I'm going to do like a hybrid of the two. I'm going to put planks in between each of the upright ribs. That way you can still see the ribs, but you can't see the glue mess. It's super simple, just hold a piece of foam up to it, make some marks with your knife, cut it out, stick it in the hole, go to the next one. Some of these holes are kind of strange because the curve is just a little tricky to cut out, but you can figure it out. Alright, once you get all the holes plugged, if this is the method you're going with, just pop out a piece with your X-Acto or tweezers or something. Put glue in the hole, not on the piece, all the way around, and then stuff the piece back in so it's nice and level. Once that's all done, go ahead and go back over everything with your wire brush to make sure it's all got texture and the texture is going the right direction. You shouldn't have any glue squeeze outs that you have to remove, but it's not a bad idea to check. Because the next step is coat the whole thing in Mod Podge and black paint. Well, not the part you've already painted. Unless you want to be scrubbing this off your hand for 20 minutes, a glove is a real good idea. Also, don't worry about painting the magnets, they will still have more than enough pull strength. In fact, a couple of these attach themselves so well, I actually did paint it on purpose, kind of heavy, to try and kill a little bit of that pull strength. If you got impatient and put them together before the Mod Podge was completely dry and they ended up gluing together and then ripping out a magnet, it's fine, just glue it back in, same as you did before. Also, don't worry about the fresh glue you're going to see now because we still got to add like 2 or 3 colors of paint to this. So a good way to paint this in a hurry is to use a chip brush. This is a 2-inch wide one. Remember, we're using burnt umber here. We want this whole thing to be pretty dark. This may not be the best way to paint the outside of this thing, but you ever watch Bob Ross? How he cleans his brushes? Yeah, do that. If you go across the grain that you cut in with the wire brush, it won't clog your texture. If you go the other way, you might clog it. So go ahead and paint up all the parts that are black in the brown. For your dry brushing, I'm using a tan here. This does look extremely bright, but it does dry darker than when it first goes on, and we're going to black wash, so don't worry about that. And just go ahead and go over everything with the tan. Use a smaller brush to get in tight spaces if you need to. And now we'll use some King's Gold Yellow to do some more highlights. It's a good idea to try and go a different direction than you did with the tan, maybe a diagonal or something, just in case you have streaks, they'll just blend into each other. If you do get streaks, you can use a clean brush and just sort of smush it all around so it all smears and blends in. So after you get all your little parts painted, put it all together and do the outside of the ship as one giant painting project. That way you don't have weird things that don't line up, like streaks or something. One good way to do this, at least on the larger areas, make sure that you don't have much on your brush. Spread out the heaviest stuff real light-handed, and then go through heavier-handed, just slapping it like Bob Ross. Put the heavier stuff on one direction, and then go back the other direction to make it blend. Let's do that all the way around. And there we go. Now we have 2 decks above deck on the back that you can access. You can get into the front area. There's a little mini deck on the front now too, and it has a better bow shape. Don't worry too much about the very top and the very front ones being really flexible and hard to take off without breaking them right now. We will add railings to this, and that'll stiffen them up considerably. But once all your paint is completely dry, I mean like overnight dry, go ahead and black wash all of it, and then we'll move on to something else. And of course, sales pitch. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so on Patreon or Ko-fi. But thank you for watching, everybody. Don't forget to like, share, all that good stuff, and I'll catch you on the next one.